Scarlett Amaris, if I pronounced that correctly. Just make yourselves comfortable.
Absolutely.
That's all right. Right, so you talked before we began about the genesis of that, but do you want to go... Oh, hello. You're going in. The motors on the curtain. Okay. So yes, you talked about the genesis of how... Do you want to just go back a little over that for those who came in late? And you said that this started as home movies, not for public consumption.
Yeah, Kareem brought his cameras and we started interviewing our neighbours and the people around us. It was really Kareem's fault for also getting me and Scarlett to tell our central ghost story to camera for the first time.
All right.
Which is something we'd never really wanted to...
So is that something that came late in the process? Had you already got the other footage yourself and then it was, well, this is the top and tail, our own story?
No, that was really the genesis of it.
All right.
Kareem was shooting bits and pieces. It was February. It was snowing very hard. We couldn't go out that day and he basically got us to repeat our tale to camera.
Okay.
And then that was enough to get Fabrice, the producer from Paris, to encourage Kareem to continue.
And as having not planned it as a public piece, when you see it on the screen there, how does it make you feel? Does it feel very... I mean, obviously it's a very personal
It's the tip of an iceberg always, because it's really just... we kind of tried to put in one representative of each type in the area, in that really there's only room for sort of one New Ager or Urani's particularly special, so he's kind of the main sorcerer. But really it was culled down from at least 48 hours of material, and as it says in the show, a lot of people who talked openly clammed up when we pointed a camera at them, and that was a lot of folk who simply wouldn't repeat their stories on camera for all kinds of reasons.
I mean, there's some for it, obviously, the chap with the orbs, Jap?
Yeah.
Because there's some, I mean, this is me watching it as a viewer for the first time. There are some where I feel the story, you're being a little more sceptical than others.
Well, I figured the way to do it also is to let everyone stay on screen long enough so you can get a sense of what they like, and that by editing them shorter, they would be more convincing.
Right.
By letting people talk longer, you have the chance of actually figuring out what they really like a little as people. Because often what happens is something comes up which is deeply strange. You start making inquiries, and then the people you talk to turn out to be a little funny or a little off. But then that in itself doesn't really explain away the initial strangeness or what's wrong with it. But at the same time, editing out their vagaries, like Yarp's always trying to sell you something. It's very Dutch in that respect. He's always got a product or a book or something he's trying to plug at the same time. We could have left out Yarp's plug, but that would be essentially diluting Yarp's character, because that's what he's like, even when you meet him in real life. He'll always try to sell you a painting or try and sell you something, while at the same time explaining how Mary Magdalene was there.
So when you're obviously faced with, so I'm not going to pronounce the name right, but the sorcerer,
Urani, yeah.
Urani, and you think that's sort of the opposite ends of the spectrum?
Yeah, everyone was fond of Urani, so he ended up taking the lion's share of the film, particularly the French producer was always saying that we love the little Urani, you must leave more of him in. So, but yeah, there are a number of folk like that. Urani's got a sorcerer friend who has actually had a very bad falling out with this year. There's been some strange and paranoid times down there.
I'm just going to check because we're not using the microphones. Is everyone hearing okay at the back there?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean,
This
all relates to stuff that happened quite a few years ago now.
Right.
The length of time it's taken to shoot the stories and edit it together is...
Well, we saw 2012 appearing quite a lot on the screen, but when did you actually start? What's the earliest footage that's there?
When did the events in the castle take place?
No, it was the earliest footage.
The earliest footage would have been 2011, and the last events in the castle would have been when? 2012, yeah. So about 2-3 years ago.
Okay. So you said the snow shots were the last thing?
No, they were first.
The first thing?
Yeah.
So you already had that, because obviously that's the image that ends the film, of the figure, well, one of the images towards the end of the film, the figure walking through the snow.
Oh, the person struggling through the snow?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be me.
But you said that was the first thing to be shot, so you already had did you already have a concept of the the structure of the film.
Not really, no.
Together.
No.
But you had that image of the figure in the snow.
Yeah,
early on.
that jumps out at you the moment you get there. And that's the first real postcard view of the castle you see as you're coming up the road, and it's clear that it needs to be there.
And how long have you actually been based there now? Because you said you went there originally to shoot a documentary.
Yeah, I first went there in 1990, and in fact spent a lot of time there with Immo Horn, who is here in the audience somewhere, shooting a film called The Secret Glory, which is about the life of a German Jewish Grail historian, Otto Wilhelm Rahn, who really discovered the castle in 1930. Otto's problem was that he then joined the SS and reported back the whole thing to Heinrich Himmler, who became very interested in it, and the Nazis had the idea that it was the Grail Castle. We left all of that out in this documentary, as the entire Nazi thing was something we dealt with in Secret Glory.
Right.
We figured we'd push it into the background, but in reality, yeah, we read Rahn's work, which is now translated into English, and that basically alerted me to the story of the castle.
Well, this thing you mentioned in there, you know, that Vintage especially has got, so from the Holy Blood and the Holy Grail and Dan Brown, all these things, it's got so, is out there in the consciousness, if you like.
Yeah, it's been causing consistent problems, I think, for people's belief
yes, I'm sure.
decades. It's kind of a stumbling block for.
So, given that chunk of things was very much in the public knowledge, how did you feel you could bring something new, show what was something that people didn't know about, if you like, that wasn't part of that?
Well, we kind of had to have Rennes because that was also part of the stipulation of the French producers, who were very, very keen that we include the President Mitterrand story. There were certain bits of the story which the French producers really wanted in there for the French market. And in reality, yeah, Montsegur, Rennes and Bucharest are kind of the points of a big triangle, really, in that it's really the entire landscape in between is pretty special, pretty odd. There's numerous small villages dotted in between those points, which are just as interesting as Rennes and Montsegur, but we didn't mention them in the documentary because we figured it would just confuse the audience if we kept mentioning different places. But it's about 150 square kilometres, and I'd say the whole area is a little quirky.
Right, well, let me see if we've got any questions. I've got a...
I really enjoyed the film. It's unusual to see a film that's that sort of that allows many different people to speak their experiences, and I really enjoyed the way that they were just shown, and then you could decide for yourselves. I'm particularly interested in your experience that you had, that the story is based around, and it sounds, having done quite a lot of research on consciousness and consciousness altering phenomena, it sounds a lot like a DMT experience or something that people describe taking a substance that alters a part of our brains that, you know, is definitely linked with some kind of strange experiences. Did you have that, when you had that experience, was it just completely clean with no mind-altering stuff? And where do you think, if it was, where do you think the power came to transport you so strongly?
Well, first of all, yes, the problem was that we were completely clean and not even drunk, and in fact had just flown into France at that point. And and there were two of us there, as well as the other part of the initial problem, that there was a second witness. If it had happened on my own, I would have assumed it was an acid flashback or that I was hallucinating in some way. But the problem of us being completely sober and there being two of us, and I suppose essentially seeing and experiencing exactly the same thing, made it impossible for either of us to explain it away afterwards. And then a worse problem was also that when we started reading up on the history of it, we realized, particularly looking back on the material we'd generated for the Nazi film, that the same things had been reported for a really long time previously. When I was doing the Secret Glory, the Round documentary, a lot of people we interviewed had mentioned speaking to dead Cathars or seeing their own ancestors on the mountain, but had dismissed them as being cranks at the time. So yeah, no, it wasn't under the influence of any mind-altering substance, and there has been a lot of attempts over the years to try and access that state of consciousness by using different psychochemicals and things, and all to no effect. And that one can't really switch the castle on and off by taking drugs, as far as I know. All that happens is you end up having a drug trip in the castle, but it doesn't actually bring on what the heck it was that we experienced.
You're no,
Thank you.
I mean, you're no stranger to strange experiences during film, because I've read your diary many years ago. I read your diary from Dust Devil, where there were certainly interesting experiences there which weren't explained. So do you feel this is something you attract?
Joseph Bennett's the production designer of Dust Devil.
Oh, really? It's a long time since I've read it, and they're a bit vague, but I remember things on the road and killers on the road and things.
But most of those things are things that didn't quite cross Immo Horn. Is also second unit on Dust Devils here tonight. And yeah, I think a lot of things happened to Immo while you were out there.
Well, we don't want to get onto that too much, but I was just wondering whether you feel that that's something that you attract.
It's a deeply odd place. No, I think it's also the locations. There was a place out when we were shooting Dust Devil called Spitzkop, which was a big volcanic rock formation that we were shooting around. And Spitzkop, like Bucharest, was a very similar place. Worried a lot of people. We had a lot of people freaking out up there. The German construction people, Wolf and Eva Strack, wouldn't work there, so it affected their brains. Other people said the water was funny, but everyone kind of agreed that there was something weird about Spitzkop, that it was it bothered people. And maybe that's, you know, I don't know, geotelluric energy, underground waters, the magnetic nature of the rock itself. But it was also a Bushman sacred site in the old days, so one can't rule out the possibility of spirits or
every corner you turn, there was a little rock painting that had never been seen before.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean,
I do recommend that diary. I don't know if it's still out in publication, but it's worth to read. And another question? Oh, I'm going to say here because we had the front, and I'll come forward then. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
So shall I get a microphone? No. Okay. Let's.
Like while I was watching this, it reminded me of I was in southern Greece. I'm Greek, my origins. It's just south of Sparta, and there's a small village there, which they had reported a lot of this type of phenomenon going on, especially during the end of the Second World War. And the people really believed that they were spirits, they believed that they were spirits or their ancestors, whatever have you, or people that perhaps were killed during the war, that were still existing and giving information or just appearing in front of people there. And what's very odd is a lot of people from the city of Sparta and other, surrounding villages, when they feel ill, they go up there and they kind of get better within like a day. It's kind of a strange place, and I'm curious, or I wonder if it is some sort of magnetism that's there that would be drawing these energies to sort of materialize or to heal or to appear, or I don't know what. What do you think? Is that what you felt there? Because that's what I got.
Yeah, no, the jury's still out after all these years. There's multiple different possibilities. That we are in the film. We try to turn over a few of them, from aliens to elves, but you do get a lot of different takes on it. I mean, there's one village in the south of France, Pont Saint-Esprit, which went completely mad in the 1950s. There was a period of time where the entire village basically lost their minds for a period of about 2 weeks, and no one could really agree what was happening. They were seeing angels, devils. It was so severe, I think about 7 people actually died.
Was that they danced? Was that the one that they danced?
Initially they blamed it on, the first thing they thought of was a natural form of sort of LSD and ergotin, ergot poisoning from the bread. They arrested the town baker thinking it was in the bread, because the only commonality they could find was that everyone was eating bread from the bakery, but the town baker always protested his innocence, and they didn't find any actual chemical or physical evidence of ergotin poisoning, but it was the only explanation they could have. Then they switched that after they dropped the ergotin thing and thought maybe it was mercury poisoning. And more recently people have introduced the idea that maybe it was a secret US LSD experiment, which I don't believe at all. But all we know is that for a period of weeks, everyone in that village effectively lost their minds. It was a very localized outbreak of what we might call mass hysteria, of people literally seeing angels, devils, and what have you. Of course, there were attempts to try and perform exorcisms, but no clear agreement as to whether it was a spiritual or chemical or what the actual source of it was.
Yourself, you say in the film that, you were completely clean and you had this experience.
Yeah, I mean, initially I wasn't sure whether what we saw was something that, my initial thought was maybe it was a ghost or some kind of, one thought we had was that maybe it was an ancient memory that was somehow using our brains as wetware to replay itself. But that then falls apart when the things become interactive. If it was just a ghost or it was a memory replaying itself, it wouldn't be able to interact with you, which was the problem of the lady being able to see us and touch us made me start to feel that it wasn't really just a recording or something that was static and trapped in the rock, and brought me around more towards buying into the incredibly ridiculous idea of ancient deities still actually retaining some of their power.
Can I jump in for a minute? Yeah, all I was going to say is, also after we had this experience, it went and did a lot of research in seeing anybody who had similar experiences throughout the ages, and then stumbled across this tranche of like these white ladies that have appeared in these different places. And I'm not talking Marian apparitions. I think that Marian apparitions were adapted later on. I think that it's something that exists in these places of concentrated telluric energy, and I don't know what triggers it. I mean, we've tried forever, different times of day, different dates, different whatever, trying to capture these experiences again. I don't know what triggers it, but at certain points the worlds touch and it happens. And I think that our brains take whatever we know, and you were saying that they think it's the ancestors, because I think that you project onto it. It's so overwhelming that you project onto it kind of what your brain first thinks, and that's why you get Marian apparitions. People think they see the Virgin, they think they see whatever, but in researching a lot of places where these ladies were seen were ancient Celtic temples, and they always had a sacred source, and the sacred source was always a healing source. And then they came in later and the Christians built upon those churches, and then you have the whole Marian tradition. But you have a very, very, and I would suspect in Greece as well, for sure, a very old tradition of these women appearing at different times for different reasons.
I was signalled 5 minutes a couple of minutes ago. It's very disappointing because I've got a question, but I'm going to see if we've got more out there. Oh, look at this. As soon as I've got 3 minutes left, got 4 hands down. He did have his hand up first a long time ago, so I'm sorry, I have to go with the front there.
Wondering about the orbs. Did you ever film them or see them yourselves?
We have taken lots of pictures of orbs, and I'm kind of an orb skeptic.
I was going to say when I was watching it, you're a filmmaker. You know how light works on cameras and things. Surely you must have realised there'd been a lot of
Yop's very charming.
Yop's great, but Yop has the orb camera that can take an orb out of anything. Oh, take a picture. Look, there's an orb. Again, really?
Got time for one more?
Yes, Scott. In the middle there, yes.
I've had a few similar experiences myself with the sort of figures appearing. And I found, almost with all of those, I then spent a lot of time trying to convince myself that it didn't happen or they're not real. And I sort of explore that through my writing to try and convince myself and prove to myself that it was real. And I wondered if that was part of the process with the film, was to almost help you deal with the fact that it had actually happened. Because you try and explain things like that to people, and they automatically have that sort of look of disbelief. And by going through the process of the film, that it was a way of trying to convince yourself that it had actually happened, because it's very easy to almost get to the position where, no, I made it up, no, it didn't happen. Yet another part of your brain is going, yes, it actually did. And you've got those images in your head. And by making the film, was that part of what that was all about?
That would certainly help. I mean,
Yeah.
it was very, very difficult from the point of view that it was the first time I honestly couldn't explain something away, and I think it was the fact that there were 2 of us.
Yeah, it wasn't the first time for me. I had a completely different process from him, but for me it was more because I've seen stuff my whole life, and I've come to terms with it, and I've decided it's okay, and I talk about it, and you know, I accept that. But for other people who do, and I know that process is terrifying at first, if they could, you know, just have somebody else say, hey, I've been there as well, it was okay. But you had a completely different.
Yeah, it was tricky. I mean, I certainly examined many different variants, and there were other folk who had seen some of the same things in the mountain who were very strongly against the idea of us saying anything. There was a big debate in advance. In fact, you know, about 3 years afterwards, there was kind of a split between those of us who decided that maybe we ought to mention it, because if the gods of old really are amongst us and these things really are happening, it makes sense to say something about it rather than to just pretend it's not really happening, as opposed to a lot of other people who were saying, whatever you do, don't tell anyone, and never breathe a word about it. So I've heard ridiculous stories from my mother, from my best friends, and we naturally dismiss them instantly as being, well, a bit strange, or even when they're people who you really trust. And if someone comes up to you and says they've seen a UFO or they've seen an elf or something, it's virtually impossible to take on board.
I'm going to ask a question very quickly because, and then we're going to go, because we are obviously, 9 o'clock, we've got down the Leicester Square Theatre that you can all go to with your tickets, this music event. So I did just want to ask how Simon Boswell got involved on the project in terms of putting the music together.
Well, Simon came down and visited us.
That's how to get involved in your films.
You made the mistake of showing up.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend just visiting the area as well, because you take the laboratory approach and go there for oneself and spend the night on the mountain and see what happens. It's just the same as you can't really know if you've touched it. But yeah, strong recommendation to that we relocate to the Leicester Square Theatre for the Otherworld.
And then we'll meet you all on the mountain
Suitably
in a year's time. Richard and Scarlett, thank you very much.